Don't bend on it. Find a way. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivadika-ācārya Ashtottara Shri Śrīmad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivadika-ācārya Ashtottara Shri Śrīmad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Śrīmad-Bhāgavad-gītā ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta-vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So it's very auspicious that you come. We're starting the Bhagavad-gītā again. At this point, we've just finished going through about 4 or 5 times over the last 30 years, and now we're just starting again. So, we'll be on page, I want to read the preface and then the introduction.
Did you say we're starting over?
We are starting today. We just finished chapter 18.
Really?
Yes, sir. Very good. So we're going to be on page Roman number 17. Okay. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yeah, come move over here on the men's side in a little space. You're okay. She moved over, so it's okay. Yeah, they can just come at the end there. Now, can someone set him up with a book and a stand? We have more on the book. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Krish. Okay. All right. So on this 31st day of July, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as it is, translation commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Dravida Dasa Prabhupada. And we're beginning the book again, beginning with the preface on Roman numeral page number 17. Originally, I wrote the Bhagavad-gītā as it is, in the form in which it is presented now. When this book was first published, the original manuscript was, unfortunately, cut short to less than 400 pages, without illustrations and without explanations for most of the original verses of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. In all of my other books, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Śrī Upanishad, etc., the system is that I give the original verse, its English transliteration, word-for-word Sanskrit-English equivalents, translations, and purports. This makes the book very authentic and scholarly and makes the meaning self-evident. I was not very happy, therefore, when I had to minimize my original manuscript. But later on, when the demand for the Bhagavad-gītā as it is considerably increased, I was requested by many scholars and devotees to present the book in its original form. Thus, the present attempt is to offer the original manuscript of this great book of knowledge with full parampara explanation in order to establish the Krishna consciousness movement more soundly and progressively. So some of you may not know what a parampara explanation is. Parampara is a disciplic succession of gurus and disciples. The qualified disciple becomes the guru. And Srila Prabhupada is in a disciplic succession that begins with Krishna. And then Brahma, Narada, Vyasadeva, and then down through Lord Chaitanya, and all the way up to Srila Prabhupada. So it's very authoritative. So now he was very happy. This is a preface he's writing when the unabridged version came out, which is what we're reading, which is with all the purports and everything. Our Krishna consciousness movement is genuine, historically authorized, natural, and transcendental due to its being based on Bhagavad-gītā as it is. It is gradually becoming the most popular movement in the entire world, especially amongst the younger generation. It is becoming more and more interesting to the older generation also. Now, Prabhupada is writing this probably in early 1972, when the first edition of this unabridged version was published. Older gentlemen are becoming interested, so much so that the fathers and grandfathers of my disciples are encouraging us by becoming life members of our great society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. In Los Angeles, many fathers and mothers used to come to see me to express their feelings of gratitude for my leading the Krishna Consciousness movement throughout the entire world. Some of them said that it is greatly fortunate for the Americans that I have started the Krishna Consciousness movement in America. But actually, the original father of this movement is Lord Krishna himself, since it was started a very long time ago, but is coming down to human society by disciplic succession. If I have any credit in this connection, it does not belong to me personally, but it is due to my eternal spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Madhvācārya 108 Sri Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. If personally I have any credit in this matter, it is only that I have tried to present Bhagavad-gītā as it is, without any adulteration. Before my presentation of Bhagavad-gītā as it is, almost all the English editions of the Bhagavad-gītā were introduced to fulfill someone's personal ambition. But our attempt in presenting Bhagavad-gītā as it is to present the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Our business is to present the will of Krishna, not that of any mundane speculator like the politician, philosopher, or scientist, for they have very little knowledge of Krishna, despite all their other knowledge. When Krishna says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, etc., we, unlike the so-called scholars, do not say that Krishna and his inner spirit are different. Krishna is absolute, and there is no difference between Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, etc. This absolute position of Krishna is difficult to understand for any person who is not a devotee of Krishna in the system of parampara, disciplic succession. Generally, the so-called scholars, politicians, philosophers, and swamis, without perfect knowledge of Krishna, try to banish or kill Krishna when writing commentary on the Bhagavad-gītā. Such unauthorized commentary upon the Bhagavad-gītā is known as Mayavad Bhashya, and Lord Chaitanya has warned us about these unauthorized men. Lord Chaitanya clearly says that anyone who tries to understand the Bhagavad-gītā from the Mayavadi point of view will commit a great blunder. So, Mayavadi means impersonalism, taking the personhood out of Krishna, which is not going to work. So we'll learn more about that in the purports that follow. The result of such a blunder will be that the misguided student of the Bhagavad-gītā will certainly be bewildered on the path of spiritual guidance and will not be able to go back to home, back to Godhead. Our only purpose is to present this Bhagavad-gītā as it is in order to guide the conditioned student to the same purpose for which Krishna descends to this planet once in the day of Brahma, or every 8,600,000,000 years. This purpose is stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, and we have to accept it as it is. Otherwise, there is no point in trying to understand the Bhagavad-gītā and its speaker, Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna first spoke the Bhagavad-gītā to the sun god some hundreds of millions of years ago. We have to accept this fact and thus understand the historical significance of the Bhagavad-gītā without misinterpretation on the authority of Krishna. To interpret the Bhagavad-gītā without any reference to the will of Krishna is the greatest offense. In order to save oneself from this offense, one has to understand the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he was directly understood by Arjuna, Lord Krishna's first disciple. Such understanding of the Bhagavad-gītā is really profitable and authorized for the welfare of human society in fulfilling the mission of life. The Krishna consciousness movement is essential in human society, for it offers the highest perfection of life. How this is so is explained fully in the Bhagavad-gītā. Unfortunately, mundane wranglers have taken advantage of the Bhagavad-gītā to push forward their demonic propensities and mislead people regarding right understanding of the simple principles of life. Everyone should know how God or Krishna is great, and everyone should know the factual position of the living entities. Everyone should know that a living entity is eternally a servant, and that unless one serves Krishna, one has to serve illusion in different varieties of the three modes of material nature, and thus wander perpetually within the cycle of birth and death. Even the so-called liberated Mayavadi speculator has to undergo this process. This knowledge constitutes a great science, and each and every living being has to hear it for his own interest. People in general, especially in this age of Kali, are enamored by the external energy of Krishna, and they wrongly think that by advancement of material comforts, every man will be happy. They have no knowledge that the material or external nature is very strong, for everyone is strongly bound by the stringent laws of material nature. A living entity is happily the part and parcel of the Lord, and thus his natural function is to render immediate service to the Lord. By the spell of illusion, one tries to be happy by serving his personal sense gratification in different forms, which will never make him happy. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. The Lord wants this, and he demands it. One has to understand this central point of the Bhagavad-gītā. Our Krishna consciousness movement is teaching the whole world this central point, and because we are not polluting the theme of the Bhagavad-gītā as it is, anyone seriously interested in deriving benefit by studying the Bhagavad-gītā must take help from the Krishna consciousness movement for practical understanding of the Bhagavad-gītā under the direct guidance of the Lord. We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad-gītā as it is, as we have presented it here. And if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success. HG Bhaktivedanta Swami, 12 May 1971, Sydney, Australia. So I was a little off on the date. So, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Śrī Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Śrī Parampara. So this is a very auspicious, what can I say, turnout for our beginning the Bhagavad-gītā again. We've had classes with 2 devotees, 3 devotees. There was one with 1 devotee. But of course there are more out on YouTube now. But now this is a very nice turnout. So thank you very much for coming. So this is a wonderful little explanation of how this book came to be written. That's what the preface does. And here Srila Prabhupada gives the reasoning without any, what should I say? He's not mincing any words, let's put it that way. So Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, he was... Yeah, and he had, after quite a bit of struggle for almost a year, he found a very fortunate and favorable venue by which he could preach, which he could actually present his message, and that was the 26 Second Avenue for storefront. It wasn't a big temple and everything, but he had everything he needed there. He had his own little place, and most importantly, he had an environment in which young people, intelligent people, were searching. For whatever reason, whether they dropped some LSD or whatever, or because it was the post-war generation, didn't want to follow in their parents' footsteps so much materially. But there were certain people who were searching, and they were being exposed to Eastern philosophy in various ways like that. So, but Prabhupada was so eager to have books. He didn't come to America till he had his first 3 books, and that was the first canto of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But he knew that he needed to have a Bhagavad-gītā, because Bhagavad-gītā was well known. It was known in the West even by that time. There was a series of what they called transcendentalists in the latter part of the 19th century, including Thoreau and Emerson and other writers who had been exposed to Bhagavad-gītā. And how, because the British were ruling India, and there were scholars who went there and they saw some of the value in it. They translated it into English, so it was available in America, and it was having an impact on some of their writings and thoughts and so forth. But the actual deep meaning of the Bhagavad-gītā is hard to understand unless one receives it and it's explained by someone who is enlightened in the science that the Bhagavad-gītā preaches, which is very simply bhakti yoga. That's the essence of the Bhagavad-gītā. Sometimes people are a little confused about that because Krishna goes through and he presents different things. Like chapter 6, it's all about dhyana yoga. It was called Ashtanga yoga, 8-limbed yoga. It's the classic, the meditating yogi, in the forest somewhere with a long beard, and just controlling the breath. That's the whole thing. So Krishna presents that. But then Arjuna rejects it. This is not for Arjuna, because he says, my mind is too difficult to control in that way. And so then beginning with chapter 7 and through chapter 12, the middle 6 chapters is dedicated really to pure bhakti. And Krishna describes that. But in the first chapters leading up to chapter 6, Krishna he elucidates the position of the soul, of karma and reincarnation, of the existence of higher beings, demigods, and the Supreme Person. All of that is given in little summary form in those first 6 chapters. But the whole point here, as Prabhupada will make very clear, and as Krishna makes clear, if you read it right, is to bring you to the point of surrendering to Krishna. In fact, there's like 2 verses that encapsulate the whole meaning of the Bhagavad-gītā at the end of chapter 18, near the end of chapter 18. And I'll just recite them to you, they're so famous. One is practically a repeat of a verse in the 9th chapter, which is called the most confidential knowledge. So he says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madjaji mam namaskuru mamai vaishasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. So there's Krishna is saying, here's the essence of the whole thing. He says, I'm now going to give you this confidential knowledge again and speak to you. So just think of me. That's a big one. How do you think of Krishna all the time? Think of me, become my devotee, offer your homage to me and bow down to me, recognize my supremacy, and then praise me and worship me. So these 4 things, think of me, become my devotee, worship me, bow down to me. If you practice these nicely, you will come to me. I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. Now he's speaking to Arjuna, who actually was in the role of Krishna's friend, birth after birth. But he's also speaking to us, because we're also Krishna's friends. We've forgotten it. Bhakti Yoga is meant to revive something that's already there in the heart. It's not something artificial. There's a beautiful verse that Lord Chaitanya speaks. He's Krishna in the role of his own devotee, who started all this Hare Krishna chanting. He was the one who brought that to earth, this very easy process of fixing the mind on Krishna through chanting his name, especially in congregation with music and dancing and everything. And I don't know how many of you are going to be able to participate, but in less than a week now, on next Sunday, in LA, there's a big festival, a Rath Yatra, where there'll be at least 1,000 devotees, if not more, come and chant and dance. It's very ecstatic. And it's so easy to get caught up, and you're absorbed in Krishna through the chanting of that mantra. So that's all auspicious. So that's the central message here, to think of me and become absorbed in me. So the process is one of discovering something that we've forgotten, that is there. You know, the understanding is from this Bhagavad-gītā and other books is that we're all natives of the spiritual world. We have forgotten that identity, and we're all taking these different false identities of these ever-changing bodies. And very important understanding is that in every living being, whether it's the insects or the plants or animals like the tigers and dogs and everything, there's a living spark, just like us. In fact, we may very well have been in some of those forms, but it's always changing. There's birth, then there's old age, disease, death, and then you get reborn. And then in the lower species, there's no karma. They're not responsible. The lion goes and kills those poor deer, he's not performing a sin. That's his nature, And after that, he'll come up, and eventually you come back to the human form. And the human form is unique because of the intelligence. We can understand these things, and we don't simply have to obey the demands of the senses and the conditioned mind. We can reflect with our intelligence what is the best way that we can act in this life so that we'll have really the best life in the next life. Perhaps the spiritual world, or rebirth in a family that from childhood will be raised in that and progress. This is one of the greatest things about Krishna consciousness. Krishna says right in the 2nd chapter, Neha bhikramanashosti pratyavayam navidyate svopamapya siddharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. And what he's saying there, that in this endeavor of bhakti yoga, there's no loss or diminution. Whereas in material efforts, you may struggle very hard and become famous and rich and educated and big family and everything. But when you leave this body, it's all gone. You leave it all behind, right? And you don't know where you go. But you're not disappearing. You're taking another form. So, but with spiritual advancement in Krishna consciousness, even if you just do a very little bit, that'll be there for you in the next life. And what's the greatest danger that you're saved from? Losing the human form. You just do a little bit of Krishna consciousness. Now, we should try to do is, go actually complete the course if possible. But whatever you do, you start from that point in your next life. So that's very encouraging. Because, let's face it, Kali Yugites like us said that we don't live very long compared to previous ages, always disturbed, generally not so interested in spiritual life. It's great. It looks like there's about 12 of you here, but there's 4 million out there who thinking about Krishna right now in the San Diego area, right? Whatever. So it's rare. It's very rare. But it's the greatest treasure and value to understand this philosophy and try to practice it as strictly as possible, and make advancement in the process of purification and developing our relationship with Krishna. It's really rediscovering our relationship with Krishna. So that's all there right at the beginning in the second chapter. And we'll read that. And so Srila Prabhupada, I'm telling you, there's a wonderful photo. Maybe I'll bring it tomorrow. We're going to have another class. Of Prabhupada getting the first printing of that, it's called Macmillan Gita, And he's so blissful, he's doing one of his oceanic smiles, finally. He did the whole thing in India. He translated it, had the purports, and the manuscript disappeared. Somebody stole it, So he had to start over again when he came to America. Yeah, and some of the difficulty, I'm telling you, just because I was involved in book production for almost 50 years now. The very books of reading. I wasn't a prime editor of this book, but I had some input in some of the things. And the struggle to print the books, Prabhupada brought with him an ancient manual typewriter, which he had typed out the entire first canto. And the second canto also, which he brought with him, unpublished. Just working, as much as he could in India. He was staying in a very holy temple in Vrindavan. He'd spend as much time on that. And meanwhile, he's also working on printing a regular magazine. Magazine with maybe 8 pages, But he had no money, really. So he would have to beg money to print that. Sometimes it was either breakfast or printing the magazine, And so after doing these magazines, one friend told him, you probably should print some books. They're more permanent. People wouldn't, read them once and then throw them away. So he took that to heart. And then he worked over a 4 or 5 year period to print these first 3 volumes. Maybe I have a set of the originals. And maybe I'll bring tomorrow and show you. They're historical, And you can see they're made with the most incredible paper. I mean, they're 62 years old, but there's no disintegration of the paper. You see a book that's printed today, if it just hangs around a few years, it's going to start to go. So and Prabhupada he worked so hard on that, reviewing everything, and finally, when he had those books printed, then only did he feel he had the ammunition. He had the power of these books that he could come to America. It's quite a dramatic story, told in a wonderful biography called Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, which is available. So anyway, in this introduction, Prabhupada is giving the reasons why he wants to present this book as it is. It's entirely for the benefit of us. It's not a money-making thing. Whatever money came, he plowed back into the institution, building temples, printing more books, or he would travel around, which is a big austerity, 75, 78 years old, failing health. He'd go all around the world 14 times just to plant the seeds of bhakti. In Australia, in Africa, he went, in Germany, and he even went to Russia for a week. Soviet Union, this is in the middle of the communist days. And he made one disciple who then preached all over Russia and started the yatra there. It's quite a story. So now let's start reading this introduction. Now the history of the introduction is that Prabhupada is staying uptown. I don't know how well you know Manhattan, but he was staying with another Indian yogi, more a Mayavadi, and so finally he was a little uncomfortable because he didn't want Prabhupada preaching to his students because he was afraid he would attract some of them. So he said, okay, you can stay in my office, which is like, across town. So Prabhupada moved there. It was like, imagine living in a little office, right? There was no kitchen there. I think there maybe some little bathroom. So in order to cook, he had to walk across town, so it was quite a... But during that time, someone gave him a reel-to-reel recorder, not one of these compact ones, but big reel-to-reel. And Prabhupada spent hours recording this. The recordings are still extant. If you want, I can make them available. Prabhupada dictating this introduction is quite long and exhaustive. And then what happened was that he was burglarized. And someone broke in there and stole his recorder, and other things, which was, shocking, but in one sense it was good because he wasn't comfortable there anymore and he was more open to coming downtown where all the action was, the Lower East Side, Krishna arranged. But they didn't take the tape of the introduction, thank God, So they took the recorder. We can always replace the recorder. But this introduction is a historic document. So let's start. We'll be able to read a little bit of it. So first he does what's called the Mangala Charan. These are verses at the beginning of any major work of literature that is written by gurus, where he offers his obeisance to his own guru, and all these verses glorifying the Lord and Lord Chaitanya like that. So it's very auspicious. All right, I'm going to chant them line by line. Those who are familiar with the Sanskrit, they can. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Supadantikam. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? So I'm going to chant this myself if you want to chant along, because it's like line by line is too much. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Padijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother, Sanatana Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta, and Srila Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Srivas, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Śrī Kṛṣṇa, along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishaka. He Krishna Karuna Sindho, Dīnabandho Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute. O my dear Krishna, ocean of mercy, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the cowherd men and the lover of the gopis, especially Srimati Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Bindavaneshwari, Vishabhanusute Devi, Pranamami Haripriye. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vishabhanu and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha Kripa sindhubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Śrī Kṛṣṇa Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Śrī Advaita Gadadhara Śrīvāsadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, I offer my obeisances to Śrī Kṛṣṇa Caitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Śrī Advaita, Gadadhar, Śrīvas, and all others in the line of devotion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The Bhagavad-gītā is also known as Gita Upanishad. It is the essence of Vedic knowledge and one of the most important Upanishads in Vedic literature. Of course, there are many commentaries in English on the Bhagavad-gītā, and one may question the necessity for another one. This present edition can be explained in the following way. Recently, an American lady asked me to recommend an English translation of the Bhagavad-gītā. Of course, in America, there are many editions of the Bhagavad-gītā available in English, but as far as I have seen, not only in America but also in India, none of them can be strictly said to be authoritative, because in almost every one of them, the commentator has expressed his own opinions without touching the spirit of the Bhagavad-gītā as it is. The spirit of the Bhagavad-gītā is mentioned in the Bhagavad-gītā itself. It is just like this. If we want to take a particular medicine, then we have to follow the directions written on the label. We cannot take the medicine according to our own whim or the direction of a friend. It must be taken according to the directions on the label or the directions given by a physician. Similarly, the Bhagavad-gītā should be taken or accepted as it is directed by the speaker himself. The speaker of the Bhagavad-gītā is Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa. He is mentioned on every page of the Bhagavad-gītā as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Of course, the word Bhagavan sometimes refers to any powerful person or any powerful demigod, and certainly here Bhagavan designates Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa as a great personality. But at the same time, we should know that Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as is confirmed by all great ācāryas, spiritual masters, like Śaṅkarācārya, Rāmānujācārya, Madhvācārya, Nimbārka Svāmī, Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu, and many other authorities of Vedic knowledge in India. The Lord himself also establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad-gītā, and he is accepted as such in the Brahma-saṁhitā and all the Purāṇas, especially the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, known as the Bhagavata Purāṇa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Therefore, we should take the Bhagavad-gītā as it is directed by the Personality of Godhead himself. In the 4th chapter of the Gita, 4:1-3, the Lord says, Imam vivastate yogam proktavan hamabhyam vivasvamana vepraha manudikshvaka vebravit evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nashtak parantapan sahevayam mayatedya yogak prokta puratanaha bhaktosime sakacheti rahasyam yetaruttamam. Here the Lord informs Arjuna that this system of yoga, the Bhagavad-gītā, was first spoken to the sun god, and the sun god explained it to Manu, and Manu explained it to Ikshvaku, and in that way, by disciplic succession, one speaker after another, this yoga system has been coming down. But in the course of time, it has become lost. Consequently, the Lord has to speak it again, this time to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He tells Arjuna that he is relating this supreme secret to him because Arjuna is his devotee and his friend. The purport of this is that Bhagavad-gītā is a treatise which is especially meant for the devotee of the Lord. There are 3 classes of transcendentalists, namely the jnani, the yogi, and the bhakta, or the impersonalist, the meditator, and the devotee. Here the Lord clearly tells Arjuna that he is making him the first receiver of a new parampara, or disciplic succession, because the old succession was broken. It was the Lord's wish, therefore, to establish another parampara in the same line of thought that was coming down from the sun god to others, and it was the Lord's wish, that his teaching be distributed anew by Arjuna. He wanted Arjuna to become the authority in understanding the Bhagavad-gītā. So we see that the Bhagavad-gītā is instructed to Arjuna, especially because Arjuna was a devotee of the Lord, a direct student of Krishna, and his intimate friend. Therefore, the Bhagavad-gītā is best understood by a person who has qualities similar to Arjuna's. That is to say, he must be a devotee in a direct relationship with the Lord. As soon as one becomes a devotee of the Lord, he also has a direct relationship with the Lord. That is a very elaborate subject matter, But briefly, it can be stated that a devotee is in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of 5 different ways. So before we get into that, I think we'll say a few words about what Prabhupada said already. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Udminitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Śrī Parampara. So, the basic theme here is that this knowledge that Krishna will speak here and then Prabhupada will explain is the most esoteric that can be. Meaning that with our ordinary powers of observation and rational analysis, we cannot really get the essence of it. Because the basic principle here is that Krishna is with us at all times in our heart. He's providing, as he says in the 15th chapter, knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness. And so, if he sees that we're sincere in our service and our approach of this knowledge, then he will enlighten us from within. The whole idea is, the whole thing is revelation, is by revelation. We are simply trying to become purified and qualified so that Krishna will say, okay, let him understand this part, and gradually till he reveals everything. So you can see how an effort to understand the Bhagavad-gītā or explain it without being a devotee, then it remains a secret. It remains a complete mystery. You may come up with some theory, like Prabhupada says, one of the commentators wanted to say that the Bhagavad-gītā is a conversation between a psychiatrist and a patient. And then there's another one that was made into a movie many years ago, where, was it, Arjuna is the golfer and Krishna is the caddy? Bhagavad Vance, did you ever hear that one? Yeah.
Smith is,
huh?
I think Will Smith is Krishna.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just like, yeah, not quite. You missed the point, you know what I mean? But it was a commercial movie. Did you know about that? Yeah, but for me, all right. Thankfully, it's sunk into the muck of things that. But that's just an example of the outrageous misinterpretation of the Gita. So the Bhagavad-gītā is wholly and solely meant to bring us to the point of bhakti. But in order to do that, Krishna does deal with these other yogas, jnana yoga, karma yoga, dhyana yoga that I mentioned. But then finally, what does he say? The verse after the one that I mentioned to you, he says, Sarva dharma parityaja mamekam chanarmaja. Just give up all these other dharmas that I was talking about. Forget it, and just do one thing. Mamekam chanarmaja, a surrender unto me alone. And that means hearing from Krishna and understanding what he wants and trying to serve him in that way. He doesn't want much. He says, okay, look, you're not very rich. Patram pushpam palam toya. You just offer me a little leaf, a flower, a fruit. But with love. He's looking for our love. That's really what he wants. He's the husband of the goddess of fortune. He doesn't need anything we can give him. Prabhupada would give the example of how people worship the Ganges in India. I've seen it. They go down to the bank of the Ganges, you can attest, right? And there's a formula that's saying mantras, and they take Ganges water and they offer it to the Ganges. And then in the end, I guess they pour the Ganges water back in the Ganges. But during that time of offering, they're offering prayers and certain mantras and things like that. So it's very analogous because everything belongs to Krishna. Where did everything come from? You learn in the Bhagavad-gītā that everything we experience, right? And it's very, very logical. It divides the material energy into the solid matter. We're all familiar with that, right? And liquids, beginning with water, plenty of water, and blood and everything, so it's liquids. There's also fire of different kinds, including electricity. And electricity is a product of the fire, right? There's some kind of powerhouse that's burning probably liquid gas or whatever they burn. It's not coal, I don't think, anymore, around here anyway. But that's also, fire. And then there's air and all other gases. And then there's even more subtle material elements, the mind and the intelligence and the ego. This is all, we live with them every day, but we just haven't thought of them in that way. They all come from Krishna. These are all part of his energies. Right? Earth, water, fire, he has a verse about it, Bhumir, Apo, Olano, Vayu. And then there's the superior energy. This is one quality of energy, gross to subtle material energy. They're not alive. But we ourselves are part of his energy. We are para prakriti. We, as soul, irreducible. We never die. We're never born. I have a little mantra. You can remember it. It's English. Every body dies. You have to see it printed out. Body. Every space, body dies. Every body dies. Nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body. You're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. That's kind of the motto for Hare Krishna. They already made a T-shirt out of it, I think. So, but it's, there's a lot of information there, because we can't sense that. You don't understand that you're different from the body. Everyone's identifying with the body. If you ask, well, who are you? Oh, I'm a 35-year-old white male American. Here's my address. And that, like what's on your driver's license, right? Color of your eyes, right? There's a picture there, your address, where you live, your birthday, right? It all pertains to the body. This is where my body stays, my body appeared in this particular date, But that's not you. It's just like a suit of clothes. There's even a verse like that, second chapter. Vasangsi jirnani yata vihaya navani gunnati naro parani tata sharedani vihaya jirnyan angyani sangyati navani dehi. I also fell in love with the Sanskrit language. It's an incredible language, and all of this wonderful knowledge. So Krishna gives a very easy to understand analogy. Just as someone eventually gives up an old coat or a jacket and throws it away because it's useless, similarly, when the body goes, it's just a machine. When the body it doesn't function, it's an amazing machine, but eventually, for one reason or another, it doesn't work anymore, then you give it up. It's not that you disappear, you give it up and take another one, a new one. And you don't know what that new one's going to be. You see, unless you've practiced a system of yoga like Bhakti Yoga, which you're trying to be conscious of what you want to achieve. So it's a combination of the thoughts that you've cultivated, your consciousness, and the karma that you performed. And those two elements are going to determine what your next body is. So we want to know how to act and how to think in such a way that we get the best body. And that's the essence of Bhakti Yoga. And it's all encompassed in that one verse. Think of me. How to think of Krishna? So many ways. In this age, the easiest way is right there. It's no secret. We don't charge anything. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. And I'll share with you something that many devotees don't, because it's buried in the Madhya Leelas, you see. There's two verses explaining those two words, the names of Krishna and Rama. So this verse goes like this. Krishnir bhuvachika sabdo nashtanir vitibachika tayaraikyam param brahma Krishna ityabhidiyate. The syllable Krish, Sanskrit is such an incredible language. It means something itself, half of the name. Krish. That's your nickname. Bhakta Krish. He goes, Krish. So it embodies the idea of all attractiveness of Krishna. And that syllable na, nashta nirvidim vachika, means the ultimate bliss and happiness. So you take those two syllables, you put them together, Tayar Aikyam means one, is Param Brahma, the Supreme Brahma, the Supreme Absolute Truth, known as Krishna. And the word Rama is also a verse. It says, Ramante yogano nante satyananda chidatmani iti Rama padenaso padam brahma vadiyate. The yogis, vibrating this name, experience real happiness, real bliss. Ramante anante, doesn't end. That's the thing about material happiness. It has a beginning and an end, and therefore the wise do not delight there. There's a verse in Bhagavad-gītā. Some of you may have heard me quote this verse before. It says, Yehi sangsparjaja boga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nate shuramate buddha. Intelligent persons do not take part in the pleasures that are derived from the contact of the senses with the sense objects, sense pleasure. O Arjuna, says Krishna, such pleasures are the sources of misery, and they have a beginning and an end, and so the wise do not delight in them. So what kind of pleasure has a beginning but no end, and is ever increasing? It's not material pleasure, that's spiritual pleasure. That's what we learn. And we see, manifest in great devotees like Srila Prabhupada. you know, when you could always see he was on a plane because he went through so much, you know, to grow this movement. There were crises and threats on his life. In Bombay, there's a whole book. Guru showing who's coming here, by the way, and Balaram. Yes, he's going to make a nice visit here. Around, so just keep tuned. It's a couple of days before Balaram Purnima, which comes, I think, at the end of the month of August. So he hasn't been here in years. It'd be nice to see him again. But he wrote this incredible story of the building of the Bombay Temple, the first Bombay Temple in Juhu Beach. How difficult it was to just get the land. There was someone trying to cheat him out of the land. There were death threats and all kinds of things. And then finally they got the land. And even then, afterward, and Prabhupada, he didn't get to see the official opening because it opened in early '78. He passed in '77, and then there was an organized movement, you know, amongst the lower elements of the environment there to try to terrorize the devotees so they would leave. It's incredible what they went through. Some devotees were arrested and put into jail. And they had read in the Nectar of Devotion how you can do devotional service if this is all you have in your mind. And it still counts. So they were performing their kirtans they could do, but you know, big cooking, elaborate feasts, offering them, honoring them, all in their mind. You know, they were fully engaged, fully blissed. It was amazing. Yeah, there's an account of that I can point it out. So these are some of the struggles that that Prabhupada and his devotees went through to establish this movement, and it's going on to this day. But the level of happiness that you can attain, it's not like in the material world where, you know, mostly it's like blah, and you know, you're working hard and there's all kinds of struggles and sometimes you go through so much and then you get, oh, okay, I finally achieved this, you know, but it's fleeting. And then it's back to square one, back to work on Monday, whatever it is, you know. You really don't make any progress. And then while you're doing that, you're building all this karma that's going to bring you back to another material body. So the basic message is, of Krishna consciousness, and then I'll have to end soon, is that, and we'll continue with this introduction, it's quite elaborate, but it's very thorough, is that it's a huge mistake to just stay on the material plane and think that life is simply what we see around us and you know, that we experience in these bodies. This is a very kind of crippled understanding of the abilities and the powers of the soul to experience wonders and happiness that is on a whole different plane. And that's what Krishna consciousness is. And the parampara, which we're emphasizing here, the disciplic succession, how can we build our faith in this? Because it's beyond our ability to see right away. You know, this is these great souls, Prabhupada and his spiritual master. When you read about them, and you know, we can read their books also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Great biographies have been written. Bhakti-Vikas Swami wrote one, and you know, and you can really see these are towering intellects. You know, they're all extremely intelligent. And by their writings and by their lives, they're showing that, yes, this kind of life can be lived, and this is all real. And they're experiencing it and showing the evidence of it in their way they're dealing and where they're acting, you know. And so it gives you a sense of this is, you know, it's hard to believe, but this is actually what the reality is, and so we should strive to understand it. And so this is a great step, Bhagavad-gītā class. I hope you can all get a Bhagavad-gītā of your own to study and chant the holy name, visit the temple. These classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at this time, every week. And we have, of course, morning classes every day. The program is here for you. And if you can't make it up for the festival, try to do it. It'll be a tremendous revelation. Okay, I think we kind of have run out of time. But we have time for one quick question, if there is one, or comment.
You had a question already?
Yeah, let's do because there's an audience out there.
Hello. Oh no, I'm nervous.
Now you forgot.
Yeah. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I can't remember what book it was, but I believe that he sent copies to Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Oh, really?
I think it says that on Wikipedia.
It's possible.
1,008 books, I believe. I can't remember which book.
1,008 books.
Something like that.
Well, I think he may be conflating a couple of things. 1,000. But I thought you were going to say he sent this because he did send a book to McGill University. in English. He wrote several in Lord Chaitanya's Life and Precepts, which was a summary of the Lord's life and a summary of his pastimes. And now Prabhupada saw that book. A devotee found it in McGill University. It was sent in 1896, and Prabhupada took it as very significant because that was the year of his birth. That was kind of a forerunner of his coming to the West. That Bhaktivinoda reached out with that book.
I believe Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day is the day after Prabhupada's.
No, I think
in the Gregorian calendar.
I think you may have it mixed up because the day before Prabhupada's appearance day is Krishna's appearance day.
Well, I'm pretty sure Srila Prabhupada's birthday is on the 1st, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur's is on the 2nd of September.
Anyway, we'll look at the calendar.
Okay.
I have the calendar, and we'll try to confirm this. All right, we better get going because there's going to be an arti right now. They're going to open that curtain. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Hari Hari Bol. Vancha Karanta Kripa Patitana Bhavana Vaishnava Namo Namaha. And Shalatala, did you know exactly where we ended?
Before the list.
Oh yeah, right before the list. Okay, thanks.